Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome in to IUP-TV's only sports talk show that really matters. It is The Big Hit. I'm your host, Josh Hill. We've got another great show lined up for you. A lot to discuss. We'll begin in the National Football League. Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles and their continuing woes this season. We're going to move on then to our Fantasy Focus segment where our analysts will give you the top performers and the best adds and drops for the week. We're going to then hit the penalty box in the NHL, discuss the Sabres and Islanders trade, and then talk about who needs to step up for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll look at college football as our analysts will preview the national title game, give their predictions for that, and look at the top 3 Heisman candidates to this point in the season. And then we'll close the show off with the Crimson Huddle, where we will recap the IUP football game against Mercyhurst, preview the game against Clarion, and our own Sean McCarthy will sit down with IUP men's basketball players Matisse Keita and Marcel Suberbiel. And then we get some more Sean McCarthy as we close the show out with the 2-minute drill. It's The Big Hit on your television right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned, this is the only sports talk show that really matters right here on IUP-TV, The Big Hit. We're going to start with our Red Zone recap. Joining us for that are our NFL analysts, John Diaz on the far left and Dimitri George in the middle. Gentlemen, let's begin with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had to travel to the West Coast to take on the Oakland Raiders and fell to them 21-18, putting them at 2-5 on the season. They didn't look too good doing it. Terrell Pryor with a 93-yard touchdown rush to start the game. By the time the Steelers had a chance to get back into it, it was too little too late. And I want to know, after the Steelers' performance, do you think that these guys were unprepared to play the Raiders?
I don't think they were necessarily unprepared. I think they were unprepared for that first play. Breaking down, like you said, Terrell Pryor had 93 rushing yards the very first play of the game. Pittsburgh stacked 8 men in the box. Everyone bid on the fake. Terrell Pryor had 1 man to beat, being that Troy Polamalu was pressed up against a slot receiver. With that said, if you take away that first 93-yard rush, Terrell Pryor finishes the game with 13 rushing yards. Granted, we don't know what he would have did ensuing that drive, but he finished the game after that with 16 rushing yards. Other than that, I don't think that the Steelers were unprepared. I think that that first play knocked them out mentally, and after that, it was hard for them to get back into the game mentally and continue to play with the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, to me, what happened with that play is it was the first play of the game to come out and be, to me, they all 11 guys were all, wrong and they'd missed their assignment. Ryan Clark is still running towards Darren McFadden as if he has the football, and Terrell Pryor is still running because Ryan Clark had no idea what was going on. Lamar Woodley crashed down the line. He was nowhere even near the play. To me, it's unexcusable. You go to the West Coast, you go to Terrell Pryor, you know how immobile he is, he's from, in the Pittsburgh area, so you know what he's capable of. And to me, to come out in the first play of the game and look so bad on that first play, to me, I feel the Steelers were unprepared for Terrell Pryor and what he's capable of as it showed itself in the first play of the game. Yeah, one of the big issues for the Steelers was Le'Veon Bell. 13 attempts, only 24 yards did add that touchdown late. And Darren McFadden had a multiple rush touchdowns for the first time since September 25th of 2011. But let's move on to Sean Sweezum. He's been Mr. Perfect for the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into this week, but missed 2 chip shot field goals. The Steelers ended up losing by 3, so those field goals look very large at this point. Do you put all the blame on the 2 missed field goals, or should the Steelers have been in a position to win the game regardless?
As Mr. George alluded to last week, football is the ultimate team sport. The defense, like you said, fell asleep that very first drive of the game. Ben Roethlisberger threw an interception off a slant late in the fourth quarter that They obviously could have scored and capitalized on that. I can't put all the blame on Sweezum because it's just simply not all his fault. Granted, those 6 points may have won them the game, but the turnovers, you can't turn the ball over and expect to win football games, bottom line.
Yeah, to me, the fact that the Steelers they have troubles in the red zone. Every time they get inside the red zone, they have trouble putting touchdowns on the board, as opposed to field goals. Sean Sweezum, yes, was perfect up until this week, and you can't take away what he's done in the past. He just won the previous week against Baltimore. He won them the game with the last-second field goal. Yes, you would like to have those back if you're Sean Sweezum. But again, to me, the Steelers still have got to figure out how to put touchdowns on the board as opposed to field goals, because that's just not going to win many football games with the high scoring of the NFL nowadays. Sean Sweezum, you have to be careful with him because in the past he's missed field goals, and then after that it's a downhill stretch for him where he just goes through in a big slump. So I'm interested to see how Sean Sweezum responds. Because it could get ugly from here on out for him. Yeah,
you're absolutely right, Dimitri. And things not getting any easier for the Steelers as they have to play the Patriots this week. Obviously, a good team coming in. But let's look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Things really not going well in Philadelphia. They lost to the Giants. 15-7 was the final score in a game where Eli Manning set the Giants' passing record with 33,694 yards. Mike Vick tweaked his hamstring again in the first half of the game. Nick Foles was out with a concussion. Matt Barkley came in and looked solid. So my question is, would you go with Matt Barkley and give him a shot?
It's funny because me and Mr. George actually had this conversation before we got to the studio. Michael Vick is at the end of his career. He's at the tail end of his career. Michael Vick is not the same Michael Vick that we're used to seeing. Michael Vick also cannot stay healthy. The last time Michael Vick played a 16-game season was in 2001, his last year with the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Philadelphia Eagles need to get rid of the idea that Michael Vick is the future of their franchise. Also, I do not think that Nick Foles has the mobility to run this Chip Kelly offense. I think that Matt Barkley is that guy. With that being said, a lot of people are giving Matt Barkley scrutiny, being that he's a rookie, he's not coming out and performing, such as RG3, Andrew Luck, those caliber quarterbacks. Granted, those quarterbacks came out of college and took the first-team reps throughout the entire preseason. Matt Barkley has not taken any first-team reps to build chemistry with those guys, to build chemistry with the receivers. But I do think Matt Barkley is the future of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, to me, there's rumors out there that Nick Foles, will get the start this weekend for the Eagles. And to me, it's only his second year in this league, and I think that Chip Kelly did not draft him. He inherited him from last year's team. So I believe that, and to me, also what I look at is the NFC East is such a bad division. They're only a game and a half out of first place. So it's not like the season's over. They're still in it. And I think Nick Foles right now will give you the best chance for the Eagles to win. Because listen, I believe that Matt Barkley is getting too much scrutiny for being a rookie and struggling. He doesn't get reps during the practice week.
Absolutely.
So he even alluded to that one of their goal line plays that they ran. He had not even ran that in practice. He's just watched the first team run it. So to me, Matt Barkley, don't ruin his career already. It's not over. It hasn't even really started yet. I think you give him some more time. But I think right now, Nick Foles has got to be the guy for Philadelphia Eagles. As we mentioned, in my opinion, I think Michael Vick's career is completely done.
See, I disagree. I don't think that Nick Foles is the caliber quarterback that the Philadelphia Eagles are looking for. If you look at the teams that he won against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That doesn't attest to his talent, the talent that he possesses in this league. I don't think with the reps that he's gotten more reps than Matt Barkley. I think if Matt Barkley gets Nick Foles reps in practice, Matt Barkley is a better quarterback coming out on Sunday.
I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, in my opinion, Nick Foles, to me, right now he's a better option than Matt Barkley. He's gotten more game experience, and he's got more practice reps, but also game experience from last year. Playing games, so it's not like he's just he started about a handful of games. There's probably close to 10 games he started as a professional. But in my opinion, I don't know where else you can go because I think Nick Foles is the best option on the team right now. I think Michael Vick has had his chance and it hasn't worked out. And I think Nick Foles, it's his job to lose right now. Matt Barkley will have his chance down the road, but I think Nick Foles is right now the answer for the Philadelphia Eagles.
One last thing is, I disagree with the Philadelphia Eagles as an organization. They realize that Matt Barkley is their future, but yet they still put the ball in Nick Foles' hands. In my opinion, that's just wasting time. You're taking precious reps away from Matt Barkley to progress, to build and develop his talent in this league, and it's unfortunate for the kid.
Yeah, and the Eagles, things are really bad in Philadelphia. They have won games against the Redskins in Week 1, the Giants in Week 5 and the Buccaneers in Week 6. These teams did not have a win whenever the Eagles played them. None of the teams had a win, so things really bad. And the running game has been anemic for Philadelphia. LaShawn McCoy had 15 attempts and only 48 yards in that game. So my question is, the Eagles' inability to run the football the reason why they're struggling on offense as much as they are?
Absolutely. When the football team can run the football, you open up play action, you open up the deep threat, you open up opportunities for Deshaun Jackson. If you cannot run the ball, Shady McCoy was the #1 rusher 2 weeks ago. Now that he's averaging about 40, 50 yards a game, I don't believe he's still #1. If you give Shady McCoy the ball, you open up the field for the rest of those guys. If you have a mobile quarterback such as Mike Vick, you open up the read option. You have Deshaun Jackson on the outside. You run the ball, you open up the deep threat. You run the ball, you open up the play option, the play action in the red zone. It all revolves around running the ball. If you can't run the ball, you can't win games.
I think it's an easy answer. I think the answer is yes. If you look at the last 2 weeks, the grand total of points the Eagles have scored is 10. And I think that just attests to the lack of running game that they have. LaShawn McCoy is a top 5, top 3 running back in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And to me, everyone gets enamored with the up-tempo offense of Chip Kelly and spreading the ball and throwing the ball around. I think it's more predicated on that running game. In order for Chip Kelly's offense to be successful, he has to be able to run the football. And if he's not, things can get bad. And we've seen it the last 2 weeks. Granted, they've had injuries at the quarterback position, guys coming in and out. But to me, their ability to run the football will determine how they play on offense as a whole, because that's what's going to get it all together. And like you said, that opens up more things in that offense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're right. If you can run the football and play defense in this league, you're going to go somewhere. But let's talk about the New York Giants, who are somehow still alive in the NFC East with a 2-6 record. Do you give the Giants a snowball's chance to win this division?
Anytime you have Eli Manning on the football field, you have a chance at winning anything. Eli Manning is a 2-time Super Bowl champion. This NFC East is terrible, as Dimitri alluded to previously. I believe the Giants are only 2.5, 3 games out of first place with 2 wins on their record. There's still 8 games left. The Cowboys just had a completely awful breakdown at the end of the game, and they lost to Detroit Lions. This division is still wide open, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that the Giants, if there's one team that's going to do it, I think it's the New York Giants. Tom Coughlin, Eli Manning, Justin Tuck, Matthias Kiwanuka, guys like that, they've been there before. They've done this before. The Giants have always been a second-half team for whatever reason. They just have gotten better, and they play better football in the second half of the year. And like you said, you never know what you're going to get with Dallas. Des Bryant, having temper tantrums on the sideline. Him and Jason Witten get into it. The Redskins, they're struggling to find identity. RG3 just injured his other knee that wasn't surgically repaired. And like I said, with the Eagles, they've had quarterback problems. To me, if there's anybody in that division that can catch the Cowboys or even run away with it, I think it's the Giants. And I think it's just because of the fact that they've done this before and they've been here and they have the most experience in that division.
I agree.
Absolutely. The NFC East, wide open, to say the least. These teams are really, all of them, having subpar years, to say the least. But that's going to wrap it up for our NFL segment, our Red Zone recap. I want to thank John Diaz and Dimitri George. Coming up next, we send it to the Fantasy Focus segment right here on The Big Hit. Stay tuned.
Today I'm going to talk about Patty. Patty's best characteristics: she's stupid. Stupid and ugly. Everything she does is ugly. Watch her eat. Watch her stuff her face. Look at her. Greasy hair, dirty fingernails. It makes me want to vomit. Get a life, Patty. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Big Hit. This is the Fantasy Focus segment where we're looking at all things fantasy football. We're going to jump right into it. I'm Cody Benjamin. To my left is Connor Joyce, and we're going to look at the passing leaders from this past week around the NFL. You can see up top Matthew Stafford with almost 500 passing yards, only 1 touchdown compared to somebody like Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, and Andy Dalton, all getting at least 4 touchdown passes. What do you see from these guys in terms of fantasy perspectives?
Well, you know what? Peyton Manning's obviously the #1 fantasy quarterback this year. He's playing unbelievable. The guy can just score touchdowns like it's nobody's job. They've been having a little trouble lately, but he's still one of the absolutely the best fantasy player right now. Drew Brees, then again, he's killing it, Cody. I mean, look at this. Look at these stats: 26 completions, 34 attempts. That's something you don't see every day. 332 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
What do you like about Andy Dalton?
I mean, like you said, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, these are guys you can rely on every week in fantasy, but I think Andy Dalton's one of those guys maybe we should start paying attention to as the season goes on, because this is a guy who, obviously 19 of 30, you can get a little bit better there, but that's still great numbers. Whenever you throw 5 touchdowns.
He's getting a lot more help too now.
Yeah.
We'll talk in a minute about Marvin Jones, and it's great seeing his 5 touchdowns for Andy Dalton, something you don't see very often.
So like you said, I think Manning, Brees, those are guys you want to rely on every week, but somebody to keep an eye on, Andy Dalton. And moving on to the receiving leaders, Calvin Johnson, what an incredible performance by him. For fantasy, I think receivers are becoming more valuable in fantasy these days, and Calvin Johnson is setting the standard for that. I don't even know if I would call it a standard. This is above the standard.
Absolutely.
But you can see great numbers from a lot of different receivers this week. What do you see from them?
You know, as you said, receiving production for fantasy has been unbelievable. It used to be something that you might see the running backs. That was where you wanted your points to come from. But now you're starting to see these receivers getting all these points. You got Calvin Johnson, 14 receptions, 329 yards. That's awesome. Josh Gordon is a guy from Cleveland. The guy's playing unbelievable for Cleveland. He's easily their #1 receiver. He's a guy who almost got traded today, actually. But it's awesome to see him get productive again. Kenny Stills. What do you think about Kenny Stills?
Well, I think kind of going along with how we said Drew Brees is one of those guys that you're going to rely on in fantasy every week. This is kind of like the Andy Dalton of the receivers, where Kenny Stills is somebody who you want to look out for in the coming weeks. But as we look at the top receivers, Calvin Johnson and Jordy Nelson down here, these are guys that are playing for quarterbacks that you can rely on. And I think that just goes along with how we're seeing more receivers being valuable for fantasy teams. That's just going along with the quarterbacks in free play.
And Jordy Nelson has been a guy that's been reliable for Aaron Rodgers now for a while. And with the loss of all those receivers, Jermichael Finley, it's huge help support to have Jordy Nelson still there, and they can still win, and he's producing for your fantasy teams.
All right, well, we'll look at the rushing leaders from this week. Andre Ellington from the Cardinals. Yeah, definitely a surprise. As well as Zach Stacy, and obviously to see a quarterback up there, Terrell Pryor.
Especially Zach Stacy, because he went against one of the top defenses in the league, in the Seattle Seahawks. It's awesome to see the production. 26 attempts for 134 yards, 5.5 yards per carry. That's pretty awesome, especially against a defense like that. And as you said, Terrell Pryor. He ran all over the Steelers defense, and I mean, it's not every day you see a quarterback standing right up top as the fantasy rushing leader.
I think this just the chart here kind of attests to how running backs maybe aren't as valuable, because all these guys, with the exception of maybe Alfred Morris, weren't maybe guys that you're going to draft high at the running back position, so you never really know what you're going to get.
It's actually good to see Alfred Morris actually up here, though. He's been playing very poorly in Washington. And to see him finally do something for this team is awesome. To see the 93 yards and a touchdown. You haven't seen it yet this year, Washington, and I'm glad that you finally got to see him play.
And if I'm a fantasy owner for Alfred Morris, this is encouraging, but I would definitely continue to be patient with that as the season goes along.
Yeah, definitely.
And then moving on, we're going to look at some guys maybe we want to add to our fantasy rosters this week. Who are some guys that you want to acquire and put on your roster?
I like to add Marvin Jones to my fantasy team this week, the wide receiver from Cincinnati. He had a great week. And the guy throwing to him, I'd also like to add Andy Dalton. He's been playing great the last couple of weeks. Also, a guy named Peyton Hillis, a guy we haven't heard in a while. He's on a bye week this week, but he's been getting a lot of carries for the New York Giants, so that's big for that big pickup. Also, Zach Stacy from the Rams, he's been playing really well. He's been a good rushing leader for them. And Terrence Williams from the Dallas Cowboys has been playing great for Tony Romo.
Yeah. Some guys that I want to add, I agree with you for both Marvin Jones and Andy Dalton. That's a combination, and even with A.J. Green there, that's a dangerous combination you got to look out for. Like I said earlier, Kenny Stills, the guy, he had 2 touchdowns for the Saints. Look out for him. And Zach Stacy, as you said. Terrell Pryor, another guy I'm looking at for the Raiders. When you can have that kind of performance, I know besides the rushing touchdown, he wasn't too phenomenal, but that's somebody to keep an eye on.
Especially against a bad Eagles defense.
And then looking at guys you might consider dropping from your fantasy team.
Lamar Miller, the starting running back for the Miami Dolphins, has been playing terrible. He's my #1 drop for this week. Miles Austin is another. He's not producing at all this year. Bilal Powell, he's not doing very well over there in New York. Jarvis Green-Ellis in Cincinnati, another guy that isn't getting the carries that he thought he was going to get. And a guy you might be surprised with in Darren Sproles. A guy has not been producing this very well this year in fantasy.
Yeah. Some guys I'd look to drop. I know it's a little bit risky. Michael Vick, when he's healthy, he's dangerous, but obviously that's not been the case this year. Kenbrell Tompkins, his snap count has decreased with the Patriots, as has Chris Ivory, who only had 12 snaps with the Jets this past week. Mike Williams is on IR for the Bucs, so I'm obviously dropping him from the fantasy team. And Ruben Randall, his snaps were down the last 2 weeks. That's going to wrap it up for our Fantasy Focus segment. Some of the guys we're looking at for this week: Tony Romo, Drew Brees, Jamal Charles, Marshawn Lynch, and Phillip Rivers. A lot of names, but a lot of key guys this week.
Absolutely.
We're going to check in next with the penalty box for some NHL discussion on the Big Hit.
Here at the Big Hit, we like to be prepared, because sometimes technology doesn't always work, so we do what we can.
Hey, Sean, hit him up.
This just in, Tim Tebow just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. That's not right.
Maybe we need to prepare just a little more.
And welcome back into the Big Hit. We're temporarily renaming the set the penalty box for this segment here. It's our NHL segment. Joining us for this on the far left is Sam Owak, and in the middle, Mark McKenna. Gentlemen, a big day in the NHL. The first big move was made as the Buffalo Sabres sent Thomas Vanek to the New York Islanders for Matt Moulson, a 2014 first-round pick and a 2015 second-round pick. I'm going to ask you now, what does this do to the landscape of the Metropolitan Division?
Well, I think it changes it up a little bit. I mean, obviously Buffalo is getting a pretty good scorer with Moulson up there, and same with the Islanders are getting Thomas Vanek. So I think it could shake it up a bit. I don't think too much for the future. I think more, but for right now, I think I don't think it'll have too much of a big impact as of right now.
For me, I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think that the Islanders, they're currently second in the Metropolitan Division. They benefit greatly from this for this year. Thomas Vanek, one of the most prolific goal scorers in the NHL, could really push them forward, take them to the playoffs. As long as the chemistry's there with Tavares, I know that's somewhat of a problem. Moulson and Tavares were really tight, but Vanek could add a new scoring threat to that team and make them a potential threat for this year. As far as the Buffalo Sabres go, I think it's more of a look forward. Matt Moulson's obviously a great talent, but they get the first overall pick, or the first round draft pick from the Islanders for next year, and then another second round pick for the 2015 draft. That's a look forward for them, and I think it could help them in the future.
Yeah, you mentioned the picks that are going to New York and or Buffalo rather, and it might be a little too early to tell, but when it's all said and done, who's going to benefit more from this trade, the Islanders or the Sabres?
I think as of right now, I think the Islanders have the better deal right now because they are a better team than what Buffalo is. And with Thomas Vanek going in, he's a two-time 40-goal scorer in his career. And I think they just have more talent with the Islanders than they do have with Buffalo. They have, like Tavares, you said. They have Evgeny Nabokov, who's an aging goaltender, but he still can stop the puck. And Kyle Okposo, I think they have more talent right now up in New York than they have with Buffalo.
I'm going to agree with you. I think the Islanders benefit greatly from this. They have draft picks to give up. Grabbing Vanek just adds to that firepower on the team, and they already have a young squad that they're building around, so it should be great for them.
Yeah, and let's move on and talk about the injury bug that has kind of hit the NHL. And one of the main teams that have been affected by that is the Pittsburgh Penguins, now losing Rob Scuderi to a broken ankle after his hit from David Clarkson. Also out for the Penguins is James Neal, Bo Bennett, Tomas Vokoun, and just added was Chuck Kobasu, going to be out for about 3 to 4 weeks. How is the loss of Scuderi going to affect the Penguins' blue line, and who's going to need to step up in his place?
Well, first off, I think who should step up most is Olli Mata. He's just averaging a little under 15 minutes a game, and I think he's one of the main people that needs to step up for the Penguins to succeed. And also I have Robert Bortuzzo, who can also step up more. I don't think Letang or Orpik even, I don't think they have to adjust their game to go with Scuderi being out. But I think Olli Mata is one of the main people to step up right now. And like you said, with Chuck Kobasu coming out for 3 to 4 weeks, Bo Bennett's supposed to return this week. So that would very help that'd help the Penguins a lot with their injury situation right now.
Yeah, I think missing Rob Scuderi could hurt them pretty badly. He's a veteran player, just added for depth, and they lost that. I'm looking for Ali Mata to step up as well. He needs to add something to that offense. He needs to be a blue line presence instead of he needs to play like a professional player. And I think that's going to be a big test for him being a rookie this year.
Yeah, someone's going to have to step up in the absence of Rob Scuderi. He was a big part of that Penguins blue line. But let's move on to the Western Conference. A few teams doing very well, most notably the San Jose Sharks and the Colorado Avalanche. The Sharks 10-1-1 on the season, and the Avalanche 10-1. Gentlemen, which team would you truly consider to be the class of the Western Conference?
I think you have to go with San Jose Sharks for this one. They've been relevant for the past couple years now, and they'll continue to be that way. I like how they're very talented. They added some depth with Tyler Kennedy, granted, and they also have Joe Thornton, Marleau, Boyle, and that Tomas Hertl. They have just more depth than I think the Colorado Avalanche have. But I think both are two very, very good teams as of right now, and I see them continuing this streak for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with the San Jose Sharks. But, the Avalanche are surprising.
Yeah.
They were so good this year. I don't think anyone picked them to be a top 3 seed in the West. If you look at their stats here, they have a penalty kill percentage that's averaging almost more than 2 goals a game. This season. Their young stars are getting it done. They're playing outstanding hockey. If you look over at the Sharks, they're averaging 3.92 goals a game. That's just absolutely outstanding. It's great hockey. And I think both teams are the real deal.
Yeah.
And now, guys, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something a little bit more serious, as there's been a rash of headshots going around in the NHL. Most notable was the vicious headshot from John Scott on the Bruins, Louis Eriksson. And gentlemen, I want to know, what does the NHL need to do to address this issue?
Well, first off, I think they need stiffer penalties for it. More majors going out to these players, because this is pretty unacceptable to intentionally go out of your way to hurt somebody. It's not. There should be fines for it, bigger fines, and they need to enforce it now, or else it'll just continue with as the season goes on. Then people will know that the league won't punish them for intentionally hurting somebody and going out of their way. So I think they need to start stepping up now and start enforcing this issue right away. So because it's just totally unacceptable for that to happen, and it shouldn't happen like that.
Absolutely. There's no room in hockey for this type of play. Hockey is a physical sport, but when you're hitting defenseless skaters in the head and taking bad penalties on all-star players like Louis Eriksson, it's just bad for the league. And I think that Brendan Shanahan really needs to crack down on this. They're looking at a 10-game suspension currently. I think it should be more around the range 15 to 20. Also, I think that that Ron Rolston's going to have to look at the future of John Scott on this team. I think the head coach should take some action on this as well.
Exactly.
And the GM.
So. I mean, stuff like this is going to happen. Like, there's going to be hits where it's unavoidable, but I think you can pretty much see during this, that if you watch the video, that he went out and brought his elbow up.
Unacceptable.
And if something needs to be done, the NHL needs to start enforcing these policies now rather than later, because that is the way they're going to get their message across. Good to have hockey back, and good to have our NHL analysts here in the penalty box, Sam Owak and Mark McKenna. Coming up next, we hit the gridiron and talk about the week that was in college football. That's coming up next right here on The Big Hit.
It's gonna get loud.
And welcome back into The Big Hit. It is time for our Saturday Showdown, where we talk some college football. Joining us for that are our college football analyst. On the far left, it is Eric Kormos, and in the middle, it is Malusi Kitchen. Gentlemen, let's jump right into it. All 4 teams in the BCS standings rolled their opponents. The most impressive had to have been Oregon. They dismantled UCLA by a final score of 42-14. Which of the top teams in the BCS standings do you see matching up in the national title game, and who's going to be left out?
Well, it's interesting. Right now we have all these undefeated teams, and every year it kind of comes down to this. Week 8, Week 9, Week 10, everybody starts getting worried. You know, who's going to be in, who's going to be out of the BCS championship game. This is a funny way of kind of working itself out. I look at Alabama. Of the 4 teams between Ohio State, Alabama, Florida State, and Oregon, they have the toughest schedule left. SEC championship is to play LSU and Auburn. But I still see them getting through to that national championship game, and Oregon as well meeting them there. I don't see Ohio State getting it, even if they're undefeated, Big Ten bias. So I'm going to go with Oregon and Alabama right now.
Yeah, that's who I'm going to go. And Alabama allows less than 10 points a game, so their defense will carry them over. And, of course, Oregon, who puts up, I think, literally these top 5. They're top 5 in points. So they're going to Marcus Mariota is definitely, that high-powered offense is definitely going to put up points. So I think they're definitely going to be in the top 2 just because of their ranking and how well they've played over this half of the season. So definitely expect them to be in the national championship game.
Absolutely. Is there anybody outside the top 4 that you think could possibly make a run in the national title game?
There are 2 teams that I think are very interesting as we go into this Week 10 weekend. Is that Stanford, even though they have 1 loss, they still have a bunch of big games left. They could sneak in there as a 1-loss team. They play Oregon yet. So next Thursday night, so that'll be a big matchup, national title implications there. And also the Miami Hurricanes. It's a resurgence of a program there. Right now they're 7-0. We're going to talk later about them and Florida State this weekend. If they beat Florida State this weekend, they'll get to play them again if it meets up in the ACC championship. If you can beat Florida State twice, you got to put them into that national title consideration.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you. I think Texas A&M can still make the plays because I think Johnny Manziel has played well, and even when he lost to Alabama, of course, earlier in the year, I think, and the most recent loss, he has played exceptionally well enough that I think if with some teams' help, if nobody stays undefeated, Alabama, Oregon, if they all at least lose a game or 2, I think that could push him. But I think they're going to need help to get into the national championship game. But I definitely think they still have a chance to get into the national championship game. So we'll just have to see how that plays out with the rest of the season.
They need a lot of help. They're a 2-loss team, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. They have 2 losses. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Stranger things have happened.
It has to be one or the other. Teams have to lose Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State. If they go undefeated, then they won't be in. But I'm expecting them to maybe make a run if with some help from some other teams.
Yeah, excellent point, guys. We're going to have to see how things play out later in the season. We're starting to get to that point in the season, though, where we can begin to talk about Heisman candidates. And I want to know, who are your top 3 players that should get the invite to New York City for the Heisman ceremony, I guess?
Well, Lucy and I were talking about this earlier off the air. Really, there's only 3 candidates that can even be mentioned right now. You look at Oregon quarterback Marcus Mariota. He has 20 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Right, goose egg for interceptions. You add that in with his 9 rushing touchdowns. That's 29 touchdowns. He might be the best decision maker right now in college football. And then you have last year's Heisman Trophy winner, Johnny Manziel, as you just talked about him. And then also you can throw in there Jameis Winston of Florida State. We'll get to see him this weekend, prime time against Miami.
Yeah, exactly what Eric mentioned. Those 3 are definitely the front runners for the Heisman Trophy. I think Marcus Mariota, if he stays perfect, as you mentioned, the 0 interceptions, that's a strong case. That's a strong case to make for the Heisman Trophy. So I think, but they're all definitely still in the hunt. We're only halfway through the season, so we'll have to see how the season plays out for each of those teams. But yeah, I definitely think Manziel, Winston, and Mariota are definitely the front runners for the Heisman.
Because you look at that too, the other thing that plays into that is national title implications.
Absolutely.
So you have both Oregon and Florida State. They're still right in the thick of things for the national title race.
Absolutely.
Their games are going to be more featured, so they're going to get more viewers. You can get more votes that way. But conversely, if you perform poorly and your team loses, you can be taken out of that Heisman talk immediately, and you might not even get the invite to New York City.
Right, and as we mentioned earlier, if either of those teams face up in the national championship game, that's going to have a huge implication on them whether or not who gets the MVP, their performance, how good they play, how well their teams play. So there's still a lot of variables that even though they're the 3 front runners, we don't obviously know who's going to be the Heisman winner, but we just have to wait and see how that plays out in the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's really interesting how one game can have such a big implication on a player's Heisman stock. One bad game, one loss plummets their Heisman stock, and they won't even get the invite, as you guys mentioned. But let's look now to the tussle in Tallahassee as Miami and Florida State square off, both undefeated in the ACC, both looking to keep their national title hopes alive. And gentlemen, who do you see winning this game, continuing their quest for the national championship, and who are your key players for them to achieve this victory?
Well, I look right now, this is the top 10 matchup. Both teams are ranked in the top 10. ACC implications on the line here. If you listen to Las Vegas and the bookmakers, okay, they have Florida State right now at a 22-point favorite. That's the largest spread ever for a matchup of top 10 teams, okay? Miami has been struggling a little bit lately in ACC matchups. Last week had to come from behind and score with a few seconds left to defeat Wake Forest at home, while Florida State has just been cruising so far this year, defeating the two ranked opponents they've played 114-14. That's 2 games, and they've outscored 2 ranked opponents by 100 points. So I'm going to go with Florida State. Rashad Green, their wide receiver, I'm looking for him to step up. Jameis Winston has to throw the football to somebody. He has 3 straight 100-yard games through the air. I'm going to go with Rashad Green. I think Florida State rolls. I think it'll be closer than the 22-point spread, but I still think they win by 7.
Okay. That's a good point, but yeah, I have Florida State. They rank 4th in points allowed, but they just allowed 13 points a game, and they're the 3rd. They score 52 points again, so obviously their offense is very, very dangerous. So I'm going with Jameis Winston. You know, obviously he's the catalyst for this team. You know, he has to have somebody to throw the ball. As the receiver you just mentioned, he has to throw the ball. He has to play extremely well, as he's been doing all season. So I definitely think he's the guy, as he's been all season, to push this team to the forefront. And like I said, they're the top 5 in the BCS standings anyway, so their team is so good. So I think that is going to be, Jameis Winston is definitely, you know, as he's always been, the leader of this team. Is going to lead their team to victory.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you, Malusi. Famous Jameis. You saw what he did against Clemson. Relished that big stage. He just looked like he was meant to be there. This guy is the real deal. He's a straight-up baller, and he should really have a nice game against the Hurricanes. But let's move on to more of a broader perspective and look at which top 25 teams are you guys putting on upset alert this week?
I'm going to go to the Big Ten, and I'm going to look at number 24, Wisconsin. They go on the road, play a conference foe in Iowa City. You look at Iowa right now, they've won 4 out of 5 games at home this year. They're coming off a big win at home last week over the Northwestern Wildcats. While Wisconsin, they've been playing okay, but they've lost 2 out of 3 on the road, so I think the Badgers go in to Iowa City and come out with a loss. It's a Hawkeye victory.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Missouri versus Tennessee. Missouri, they lost last time in a double overtime loss. They missed a field goal. So they just haven't played well in the last few games. They don't look focused. They look lost. And to be ranked, you know, is big. You know, I think they're in their top 10, 9, I believe. So they haven't lived up to their standings. But we know that doesn't really mean anything. But, you know, it's supposed to. So they have not played well. So I'm putting them on upset alert. I think Tennessee is going to get the win this week.
Yeah, you would have to think that there's going to be a few teams that fall here this week. That's going to do it for our Saturday Showdown segment. Want to give a special shout out to Eric Kormos and Malusi Kitchen. Coming up next is the extended Crimson Huddle segment. We talk some IUP football, and our own Sean McCarthy sits down with IUP men's basketball players Matisse Keita and Marcel Suberbiel. That's coming up next right here on The Big Hit. Stay tuned. And welcome back into The Big Hit. It is time to talk some IUP football with our Crimson Huddle segment. Joining us, guys that are normally behind the scenes on the Crimson Hawk Sports Network make their big appearance here on The Big Hit. On the far left, it's Pat Yusko, and in the middle, it's Michael Martone. Gentlemen, you were both at the game on Saturday. The IUP Crimson Hawks defeated Mercyhurst in a pretty convincing fashion. 28-6 was the final score. DeAntoine Williams, 186 yards and a touchdown. They were able to execute their winning formula, and I want to know right now, how were the Crimson Hawks able to be so dominant against the Lakers?
That's a great question. My first initial thought to that is that this is really the first week that IUP, since the first game of the season, has had a healthy offensive line. They were able to move the defense of the Mercyhurst defensive line in at the direction they wanted to give DeAntoine Williams the hole, and DeAntoine hit the holes very well. Obviously, he had a few runs. It seemed like every fourth or fifth play or so, he had a run of at least 20 yards. Maybe it really wasn't that way, but through the camera, it seemed that way. And the defense was shut down. I think that the defensive line was able to get a little bit of pressure on the quarterback, which enables the defensive backs, Terrell Holloway and company, to keep tight on their receivers and take advantage of bad passes.
Good points, Pat. I agree with you, but really, the way they started the game really stood out to me. They started off right away, no huddle, drove down the field right away. Their first 3 drives actually all ended in touchdowns. So IUP got going from the beginning, starting out in this no huddle. I really liked it. And then, like you mentioned earlier, the defense played very well. They kept Mercyhurst out of the end zone the entire game and actually shut him out completely the second half of the game. And then, like we mentioned as well, both of you mentioned the Rocket, DeAntoine Williams. He was great. He was just great. He ended up with 186 yards and a touchdown. Like you said, IUP ended with 207 total rushing yards. That's kind of what we figured going into the game. It was a windy, cold game, so you kind of figured that they were going to try and stick to the ground game, and that's exactly what they did, and it worked out for them.
Yeah, and Mike, you had mentioned the wind. The wind was gusting up to 40 miles per hour at times.
We felt every bit of that up in the press box, I can promise you that.
You look at Matt Spiegel, his first punt into the wind netted 14 yards.
Yeah.
Then Matt Spiegel had a chance to punt with the wind at his back. He had a 61-yard punt. That shows you how much of an impact the wind had. And Michael, the IUP offense was coming right at you the first couple of drives. You could tell how dominant they were. But they were able to win against Mercyhurst. Right back to work this week. They've got a tough Clarion squad, a team that plays well at home. They are 4-1 at home, the Clarion Bald Eagles. They have lost their starting quarterback, Ben Fiskus. But preview that game for me. Give me your keys to win and one player that IUP is going to need to step up for them to win this game.
Well, it took me a little bit to think of this, but once I watched the recap from the Clarion game last week, they blocked, I believe, at least 3 punts. 2 of them were returned for scores, 1 for a safety, 1 for a touchdown. So really, special teams, I think, are a big key. I don't think one player on the special teams necessarily. I'd like to see a little bit better returning out of Terrell Barnes. I know he's had some struggles, either decided to get away from the ball. I believe he had a muffed punt last week where he fumbled and Mercyhurst recovered the ball, which really is like a 55-yard pass if you think about it. But I mentioned him earlier, Terrell Holloway. It seems like when that guy gets his hands on the ball, something's clicking with that defense. And I think that if the defensive line can continue to get pressure on the quarterback, I think he continues to take the ball away.
Yeah, I'm going to go. A big key for this game, for IUP to win this game, I believe, is going to be that defense keeping up what they got when they got back on track last week, because the 2 games before that were both losses for IUP, and they let up 78 total points between those 2 games, which is just not good at all. So they played very well last week against Mercyhurst, so I think they really need to keep that up. My key player for this game is going to be Mike Box, actually, because he hasn't been playing very well at all since IUP started that 2-game slide. They lost the 2 games, and last game he was even playing. He played a little better last game, but still not very good at all.
Yeah, if there's one thing we can take away from this season so far, they have to win out, or they cannot see a chance at the playoffs happening.
As always, games on the Crimson Hawk Sports Network, Anthony Shear and myself. Games on 90.1, Mike Gosnell, Dimitri George. Sloth Williams is close to returning for the IUP Crimson Hawks. Jay Watkins listed as day-to-day. And one more note, Alexander Berdal may be done for the rest of the season, so that is a big loss for the IUP Crimson Hawks. But we are going to send it across the studio right now as our own Sean McCarthy sits down with IUP men's basketball players Marcel Suberbiel and Matisse Keita. Take it away, Sean.
Thank you, Josh, and welcome to the Crimson Huddle. I am Sean P. McCarthy, here with 2 stars of the basketball team here at IUP. I'm here with Matisse Keita and Marcel Suberbiel. Hope I said that right. And fellas, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start off. I'm going to ask you, what are your expectations for the season this year?
I think we're trying to win the PSAC once again. That's my first main goal, I think.
I think that, coming from a tradition that this team has won 3 PSACs in the last 4 years and being in the NCAA tournament for the last 5 years, there's there's a level of expectation, so we really want to, get back to where we were last year and even try to get better if possible.
For sure.
Do you guys have any personal goals for yourselves, like improving on, points per game or anything?
Not really. I just want to win games, and I don't really think about all that. As long as we win, I'm gonna be happy for real.
Yeah, I agree with Matisse, but obviously we got players that graduated, and we both, have to be more productive as a team. But if we're more productive with the team, it's gonna help, the team win more games.
And you mentioned the players that graduated. What can you tell us about the new additions to the team this year?
We have a bunch of transfer, a couple freshmen too. I think they're gonna be good. I personally think they are good players. They are different than the players that we lost last year that graduated, but they're probably gonna have a good year. I mean, we have a couple, so I don't want to like talk about each of them because it's like 6 or 7. So.
Yeah, we definitely had. I think this is the newest team we've had, at least in my years here at IUP. Basically, me and Matisse are the only 2 seniors this year, and we have a fresh and renewed team with a lot of new players coming in this year. So there's a lot of stuff to get used to and learn how we do things over here.
Now, you said you are seniors now. What is it like to be the leaders of the team, and how do you handle that?
It's a different role. I mean, last year, Scooter, Josh, Danny, Anthony, all those, and Chris used to talk a lot at practice just to make sure everybody was on the same page. So now, I guess me and Marcel have to do it, and it's not easy every day. You have to like push yourself to do it because other players actually need it. We know what we're doing, but they don't. So it's a different role that we both got to get used to it, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely an extra responsibility, but we're happy to assume it, to take the role of being leaders of this team, and we're excited of what we can give to the team and how we can teach the new guys, and to see how far we can get.
In the PSEC, what are some other schools and teams that is your biggest competition or that you look forward to playing?
Every game's a big game. You never know. You never know what team how they're gonna show up. They can have the best game of the year, so you never know. You gotta respect all the teams, but I think a lot of teams in the PSAC lost a couple players, so I don't really know what to expect right now. I know Sleepy Rock has been good in the past couple years. East Strasburg, I seriously don't really know.
Yeah, I think I've been here since day one as a freshman, so I've seen a lot of players in other teams and my own team pass through. So I know that very talented players from other teams have left since last year to this one. So I really don't know what to expect from other teams, but we always know that teams are going to come out and play IUP their best game. So we just have to be ready for everyone.
Now, Marcel, as you said, that you've been here for 4 years since a freshman. What have you seen in this team that has changed for the past 4 years?
It's been a lot. I don't know if I can tell exactly what I've seen, but as a freshman, I guess that the most important thing was to learn from other teammates. I guess that since my day one here as a freshman till now being a senior, just the growth as a player, in the classroom too, like developing as a basketball player and the work ethic that other guys transmitted to me. I think that's the most important thing that I've got from other players throughout the years.
Now, Matisse, you came here from Gonzaga, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What's it like coming from a Division I school to IUP, and what did you contribute to the team?
Gonzaga is a big school, so they won a lot in the past 10 years. So I guess they have like kind of a culture or have what you got to do to win. So I guess I've seen it for 2 years what players do every day at practice and all that stuff. So I guess I can try to bring this work ethic that Gonzaga has, even though IUP already kind of have it because they've been winning. We've been winning in the past couple of years.
What can you take away from playing these Division I schools in the preseason, guys?
First of all, I'm excited. I know Michigan State. I think Michigan State is ranked #1 in the country, so I'm pretty proud to play #1 in the country. It's not going to happen every day, but I think it's going to be a great test. They're going to be big, athletic. They know how to play. They won. They went to the Final Four a couple times, so I think we can learn from them as well. But obviously I'll play to win. I'm just excited.
Yeah, definitely. Playing these type of teams, we're also playing LaSalle this weekend. It's just I know it shouldn't be an extra motivation, but like playing these teams that you always see on TV and that they're playing the Division I NCAA tournament, you know, it's an extra motivation, and we're really excited about playing them. Yeah.
All right. Now we see Coach Lombardi. He can be very stern on the sidelines of the court during the game. What's he like off the court or in the locker rooms in between quarters?
I mean, during the game, obviously he's trying to get the best out of us. He just wants us to win, so you get a little excited. But off the court, he's a very nice guy. Actually, I like him. We always go to his house, have some dinner sometimes for special occasion. I just enjoy him. He's a very nice person. He's definitely not like that once the game is over.
Marcel?
Yeah, I guess he could give you that sensation in certain plays or moments of the game, but I think, you know, whenever he acts that way, it's deserved, or he's doing it the right way just to push the maximum out of us, you know, bring out our best game and regain our focus or whatever. But outside the game and practice, he's a really outgoing guy, you know. He likes to make jokes and have a good relationship with all the players.
Mm-hmm. Now, last question, guys. You guys are both seniors, and what are your expectations after the season and after graduation? Or what are your personal goals after graduation?
Being from France, I'm hoping that I can find a contract overseas and play basketball overseas back in France. I'm going to try to. I think I have a pretty good chance because I'm French. Beside this, I haven't really thought about anything because I think I have a pretty good chance to play pro back in France.
Yeah, one of the differences between me and Matisse, since we're foreigners and we have an advantage over just regular American players, is that we have professional basketball leagues back home, and how it works with professional basketball is that mainly other leagues, they only get 2 international players. So if me and Matisse would have to take one spot as an international player, then our chances would significantly reduce. But since we have leagues back home, we would take spot as local players. So yeah, I'm kind of a situation like Matisse where hopefully I can get a contract and play basketball back home in Uruguay.
That is very interesting. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Good luck in the rest of the season. And you guys stay tuned. You haven't seen the last of me. We have the 2-minute drill coming up next.
Appreciate it.
Listen, all I'm saying is LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan.
Why did everybody get so quiet?
We're Steelers fans. I'm a Steelers fan. And we're Steelers fans. We're good sports. I'm a good sport.
I'm a good sport.
We always have
a designated
driver.
Steelers fans.
Steelers fans don't let fans drive drunk. Responsibility has its rewards. Responsibility has its rewards.
Go!
Go! Go Steelers! Go Steelers! Go Steelers!
Go Steelers!
Hello all and welcome back to The Big Hit. This is a 2-minute drill, and I, as always, am Sean P. McCarthy. 10 years ago today, LeBron James played in his first ever NBA game. James netted 25 points and dished out 9 assists for the Cavaliers. He tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter because the Cavs lost to the Sacramento Kings 106-92. But the show must go on, and what a difference 10 years can make because the Sacramento Kings are the most irrelevant team in the NBA, and there's virtually no way LeBron is going to lose to them again. Bron started from the bottom, now he's here, at the tippy top of the NBA. After 10 years, a quartet of MVPs, 2 NBA rings, 1 big decision, and a receding hairline later, King James is in every basketball discussion. And those discussions come to the comparison. The comparison to Michael Jordan. Who's better? If you look at just the statistics from when they were both 28 years old, which LeBron is now, it's close. Jordan averages about 5 points a game more than LeBron James, but LeBron averages about 1 more assist and 1 more rebound per game. LeBron also has 1 more MVP at the age of 28, and both have won 2 NBA titles by the age of 28. But keep in mind that LeBron came into the NBA straight out of high school at the age of 18, while Jordan played 4 years of college ball and entered the NBA at the age of 21. Of course, Jordan's finished with 5 MVPs and 6 NBA titles. So who is better? I'll let LeBron James finish out his career before I make that decision. As for now, the NBA season is about to tip off as LeBron James and the Miami Heat look to win their 3rd consecutive championship, a feat that Michael Jordan accomplished twice. David Ortiz is going trick-or-treating this Halloween because he's eating up the Cardinal pitchers like candy. The Red Sox slugger is hitting a blistering 11 for 15 and boasts a staggering .733 batting average. This is coming off a 3 for 4 performance by Ortiz and a 3-1 win for the Red Sox in Game 5. No doubt the Red Sox are riding on the big shoulders of Big Papi. But as the series heads back to Fenway Park for Game 6 with the Red Sox leading the series 3-2. The Bo Sox will look to finish off the Redbirds with John Lackey and Michael Wacha the likelies to be on the mound. The odds are not in the Cardinals' favor, too. Of the teams that take Game 5 in the best-of-7 series, they go on to win the whole series 77% of the time. And I'm going to give out an award this week. The award is the Churlish Player of the Week, and it goes to Golden Tate of the Seattle Seahawks. He caught an 80-yard touchdown pass and taunted 20 yards before he entered the end zone. He was giving the finger wave to Rams safety Rodney McLeod. That's going to do it for us here at The Big Hit. For Director Danielle Eberty, producers Dimitri George, Dan Wallace, I'm Sean P. McCarthy. Don't be churlish. Keep it fresh.